I thought it might happen on Monday when I got the news on Friday, thanks to a report by Cora Hall of the Knoxville News Sentinel that Kellie Harper's buyout contract would be cut in half if she were fired today, as opposed to fired last week. I just wasn't sure. Well, turns out my suspicions were correct. The Tennessee Lady Vols announced that they have fired head coach Kellie Harper after 5 seasons. A statement is up right now on the UT Sports website. Tennessee Athletics announces change of leadership in women's basketball. According to the report, Danny White made the decision. And effectively, Tennessee is now in the market for a new women's basketball head coach for only the second time in the post-Pat Summitt era. So that's a real big story now. They have had 2 legendary coaches, and they have had to now replace both of them. I want to give a quick breaking story real quick, because as I'm telling you guys this, I went to the Tennessee Sports website. It was up earlier. Now, all of a sudden, there's a 404 page not found on the page of Kellie Harper's firing. That's a little suspicious. We don't know what's going on, but Lady Vols basketball has on its Twitter right now, Tennessee Athletics announced this change in women's basketball leadership. There was a quote from Danny White. I'm not going to give it to you directly right now because for some reason the page is all of a sudden a dead link, which I don't understand what's going on right now. But in the end, no, long story short, Kellie Harper is out after 5 seasons as Tennessee Lady Vols head coach. The news has made the rounds on ESPN, AP. So quite honestly, if there's some sort of backtrack, it's a really bad look for the program. I can pull up an ESPN quote now via Tennessee Athletics, even though the story has been taken down for now. Quote, after a thorough review of our women's basketball program, I have informed Kellie Harper we are making a change in leadership. That coming from Tennessee Athletics director Danny White. White continues, decisions like these are never easy to make, especially with someone who has done so much for the Lady Vols as a 3-time national champion student athlete. Her love and passion for Tennessee and the Lady Vols is second to none. She has invested so much heart and soul into our program and truly has given her all for Tennessee. I thank Kellie Harper for our stewardship of our women's basketball program and wish her and John well in the next chapter of their lives. John, obviously her husband, they coached the team together. Obviously, with Kellie Harper losing her job, her husband loses her job too. You never, ever, ever like to see this for anybody, but particularly somebody who did give so much to a program that she is currently coaching at. This is one of the problems with hiring former players or legends at a program as the head coach of the program. It becomes harder to fire them or move on from them. But sometimes you have to make that decision. I've been very critical of Kellie Harper. I have said she should be fired. I never took pleasure in that. I want you guys to know that. I never took pleasure in that, but this is a results-based business, and you have to make the decisions with the results. And I called for her to be fired, just for it to be out there, after that South Carolina game in the SEC tournament, when she made 2 basic mistakes that you cannot make as a college head coach at any level in basketball, where she called for even though she did not miss the 2 free throws herself that could have clinched that game, she called for the defensive foul, which made no sense with 1 second left on the clock when South Carolina was at half court and they didn't have any timeouts left because Tennessee had a foul to give that allowed South Carolina to call an inbound play. And then she left the player wide open to hit the game-winning 3. Now, Danny White was right to make the decision today. For those who don't remember, we talked about it on the show today, funny enough, and we talked about it last Friday. And for those who are just tuning in, Tennessee Lady Vols have fired head coach Kellie Harper. This news comes just after we completed our show. The story is, Tennessee's buyout, the Knoxville News Sentinel reported on Friday that Kellie Harper's buyout was going to be $1.1 million for about 4 years if they fired her before March 31st. If they fired her after March 31st, it was going to be $550,000 for 5 years. You don't really have to be a math expert to know that's why they waited till the day to fire her. They waited till the day to fire her because they wanted to make sure that they could get that buyout cut in half. That was always done by design. Danny White did that last year, so he knew that he could actually make the firing. And I think that, again, this was a financial move. You're saving $1.7 million in response to handling and dealing with the program that, quite honestly, despite all the talk of women's basketball, still not a revenue generator at this moment. There's a lot of reasons for this firing, guys. There's a lot of things. Kellie Harper, in her 5 years at Tennessee, She went 21-10, 17-8, 25-9, 25-12, 20-13, finished 108-52 in 5 years. A couple of things that we need to bring up during that time. The first team that went 21-10, that was the season where there was no postseason due to COVID. Had there been a postseason, I'm not sure Tennessee gets into the NCAA tournament that year. Her first year, it would have been the first NCAA tournament they ever missed, because even though they were 21-10, they had an abysmal strength of schedule. Not really her fault, but they did have a bad strength of schedule. If they had gotten in that year, it would have been based on their name brand alone. The next year, they were 17-8 and bounced out in the second round. In 2021-22, they went to the Sweet 16. They actually were a top 4 team at that point, and you really thought Kellie Harper had it together during that time, because at one point they were number 4. They had one loss. They looked like an unstoppable team, but then a couple of injuries down the stretch just absolutely wrecked them, and they went to the Sweet 16. But you could forgive that. They had a bunch of injuries. The next year was when they got Rakia Jackson and returned a lot of talent and added a lot of talent and had a super deep roster, and they still only went 25-12 into the Sweet 16. And then this year they went 20-13 and were bounced out in the second round. They shouldn't have been. They had too much talent to do that. They should have been a much better team. So Tennessee had to move on from Kellie Harper. And there was just some ultimate humiliation involved. Tennessee lost in the second round of the tournament to NC State. For those who don't remember, NC State fired Kellie Harper 11 years ago because she wasn't getting it done. And the coach that they replaced Kellie Harper with is the one who beat Kellie Harper in the NCAA tournament. So for Tennessee, the pinnacle of women's college basketball, to think that Kellie Harper was good enough for them, even though she wasn't good enough for NC State, and then for NC State to beat her with the coach they replaced her with, was ultimate humiliation. The other part of this is, guys, this firing comes on probably a day where, short of the Tennessee-UConn rivalry, the greatest storylines in women's basketball are happening right now, and Tennessee's not a part of it. You got a rematch coming with LSU and Iowa. Caitlin Clark versus Angel Reese and Kim Mulkey. This is the story of women's basketball right now, and it's taking over. UConn is still going and playing for a chance to go to the Final Four right now with Gino Auriemma, and Tennessee's nowhere to be found. When women's basketball is really taking hold as a story, and you have the articles about Kim Mulkey, you have the talk about Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese, Flau'jae Johnson at LSU, all these different players, and Tennessee's nowhere involved, nowhere in the picture. You had to make this move. You had to let it know that while this is happening, Tennessee is still Tennessee, and Tennessee is not going to let themselves fall apart as a program. They really did have to make this move because of these things, guys. Kellie Harper, to go back to her hiring in the first place, she was hired off one Sweet 16 run in 2019 at Missouri State. She was at Missouri State for 6 years. She made the NCAA tournament twice, made the Sweet 16 once. It was just that basis that got her hired. And I've insisted for a long time, you don't hire coaches totally based on one tournament run. You don't. That's just a problem, because a tournament run is so fluky in these things, man. And that's what happened with Missouri State. That got her the job at Tennessee. I mean, we're talking about a coach in Kellie Harper who, before Tennessee, she spent 5 years at Western Carolina, 4 years at NC State, that's 9, and 6 years at Missouri State, that's 15 years. And she made the NCAA tournament 5 of those 15 years, and only got out of the first round once in those 15 years. That's not really any standard to be hired at Tennessee. The reason she got hired is because Fulmer was steered away from hiring the best coach when he was athletic director, because I call it the Lady Vol Mafia contingency, that have these demands that must be met for a Lady Vols head coach, because they say this is how we do things. And Fulmer caved to that, and he went out and agreed to their demands and hired a former Lady Vols head coach, one who had won 3 national titles, to her credit, when she was the point guard of the 90s teams, because Shamika Holtzclaw was there, but Kellie Harper was an amazing part of that team. She was a crucial part, no doubt about it. She was then Kelly Jolly. I think that I can't really blame Fulmer, because, you don't really want to steer any ships, and the way he took over, you don't really want to ruffle too many feathers. The way he took over already was controversial with the John Curry situation. But that Lady Vol Mafia and that contingency and that fan base is going to derail the program because they have such demands and standards for what need to be done. And you just can't allow something like that to dictate your decision. So, and it did with Philip Fulmer. And the unfortunate thing for Philip Fulmer, this really, really, really puts a nail in the coffin on his tenure as athletic director. And what I mean by that is this. Every athletic director at Tennessee in the post-Doug Dickey era has something they can hang their hat on. I mean, say what you want about Dave Hart. He went and found Rick Barnes. Say what you want about John Curry. He went and found Tony Vitello. I mean, this is what we're talking about here. Different coaches or different athletic directors at different times made right hires. Philip Fulmer has nothing to hang his hat on that front. Nothing. It was Jeremy Pruitt and Kellie Harper for him. Both have been fired. And that's two of the four most prominent visible sports on campus. He made two of those hires, and they both were bad hires. Let's call it what it is. This was a real bad look on his tenure as athletic director at Tennessee. And the Jeremy Pruitt one was he was thinking about how he could get the credit for a hire of a head coach that would be more reflective of him. The Harper hire was he stumbled into that hire because he caved to the Lady Vol Mafia demands. So taking that into account, I mean, this is a really big knock on Fulmer's legacy. Now, as far as the confidence to have in Tennessee going forward with this, to be fair to Danny White and everybody, because there was a lot of criticism and thought that maybe he wouldn't actually make the firing. I think that if anybody should be trusted to make this hire, it's Danny White. Guys, Danny White is the best hirer in athletics. That's why I said he needed to make this move and Tennessee needed to make this move. I would not have said they need to make this move if other coaches or if other athletic directors, but Danny White is the guy you trust to make this hire. Guys, go back and look at some of Danny White's amazing hires over the years before he even went to Tennessee. So we can talk about Josh Heupel at Tennessee because that's honestly the most notable one. But he has made so many amazing hires, and this is why I said when he was hired at the time, he would be a heck of an athletic director. But, I mean, we're talking about a guy who, I mean, over the years has just gone out of his way to, I mean, he found Felicia Leggett-Jack at Central Florida. He found Josh Heupel at Central Florida. He found Sidney Ball Malone at Central Florida. Probably his worst hire was that. He found Johnny Dawkins at Central Florida. I mean, I'm just going to the list now, just looking at his track record. He found Scott Frost at UCF. And whatever you think about Scott Frost at Nebraska, he worked out at UCF. I mean, there's no doubt about that. Keeping on with this topic, he found Lance Leipold at Buffalo. He turned Buffalo football around. He found Nate Oates, guys, at Alabama. Yeah, that's right. He was the one who found Nate Oates over everybody else. He found Reggie Witherspoon at Buffalo. I mean, we're talking about a guy who has, everywhere he's gone, he has found success after success after success. I mean, it's really hard to say that he won't find the right guy at Tennessee to replace Kellie Harper because he's done it. He's done it multiple times at multiple places. And because of that, I think that you should have a lot of faith in Danny White to find the right guy. I think Felicia Leggett-Jack is like the biggest, most underrated find he got. Like she had been fired from another place and then turned Buffalo into a powerhouse at the MAC level and now got the job at Syracuse. So it's really hard to sit there and say that he's not going to know what he's doing when he's out looking for a coach right now. I mean, this guy is a heck of a hirer. And right now, just to break things down a little bit, Joy Williams that's right. Danny White did replace Joy Williams at UCF, but he replaced her with Katie Abrahamson Henderson, who that's the biggest one. Katie Abrahamson Henderson, he hired her and she turned UCF into a perennial NCAA tournament team. Now she's at Georgia and took Georgia to the NCAA tournament in 2022-23. Now Georgia took a step back this year. They went 12-18, but Danny White consistently hires and finds the right guys for his program, and he's going to find the right guy for Tennessee, guys. There's nobody you should trust more than Danny White on this level. We're going to wait a little while to get into candidates because I'm not, honestly, guys, I had a lot of candidates for Tennessee's football search a couple of years ago, and Josh Heupel wasn't on it. And that's what I'm talking about with Danny White. He finds guys out of nowhere. So you may say Carol Lawson. You guys may say Molly Miller. I think that's the name of the Grand Canyon University coach. There's a lot of people who will be named in this, But the truth of the matter is we have no idea where Danny White is going. Danny White has been very, very effective in his hiring. Now, the interesting part about this is this news comes shortly after Jewel Spear announced that she would return for a 5th season to the Lady Vols. Does that change anything? Who knows? You can't really make a decision based on that. And I give Danny White for not making a decision based on that. I'm sorry, I haven't checked the message board a little bit. Let me go to the message board a bit and just take a look at what we're seeing. Mike Valle says it's time to bring Kara Lawson or Candace Parker home along with Bruce Pearl. Well, Kara Lawson would be an interesting one. I don't know if they'll go that route, particularly with 2 failures from the Summitt tree already in Holly Warlick and Kellie Harper. Wadsworth III says she just wasn't getting it done with good players. She was a good player, not the coach we need. I do think she tried her best. I agree. Wadsworth also says bring in Kara Lawson. Don McMahon says, I'm so disappointed. I think she is a great coach. I think she knows basketball, Don. I think Kellie Harper is stuck in an old school Summitt way that really is all about crowding the paint. That really the last time it worked was with Candace Parker at Tennessee. Maybe with Brittany Griner at Baylor was the last time it worked, but it was around that time. It just hasn't been the same since then. And Smoky Mountain Red, Smoky Mountain Red has the great one. Can I get a part of the 500,000 they are saving? Smoky Mountain Red. It's not just 500,000. It's they're saving 550,000, and they're saving that over about 3 years. So they're saving 1.7 million. So you could ask for more even. You say Smoky Mountain Red also says break away from the Lady Vol tree. That's why I think Kara Lawson would be a bit of a question. I'm not so sure they want to stay on the Lady Vol tree after the last 2 coaching moves. GBO Kyle Beach says he didn't find Rick Barnes. Rick Barnes says us. I do believe Kyle Beach is referring to Dave Hart with Rick Barnes. You are right about that, but quite honestly, Kyle, that was still gutsy for him to hire Rick Barnes. I mean, you're talking about he hired a guy who had just been fired at Texas, and Dave Hart needed to make a splash hire, and this wasn't a splash hire. This was a stability hire, and it worked out. Smoky Mountain Red says you're excited to see who he gets. I agree. Life needs to be pumped back into the Lady Vols program. Smoky Mountain Red, I totally agree with you. Zachamania says in response to one of the earlier comments, why the heck would you want Bruce Pearl? He hasn't gotten out of the first round since 2019. Yeah, we've had some debates on that for the men's side, Zachamania. I'll give you that. SW Fan says it's great news. Brian Jackson says was really pulling for Kelly to bring this program back. And I agree. I think a lot of us were. I think she's a good person, and I think she knows basketball. It just didn't work out. And he says, stop with the Molly Miller. That's the Grand Canyon coach. Says, just want her because she's hot. She has been successful, but yeah, she hasn't been successful enough at certain levels. So I don't think you're going to I don't think she's going to get the hire. SC Scout Guy says, well, I'm just going to give SC Scout Guy, I'm just going to put him on here because whenever anybody says I'm right, I do that. He says, I have to say Caleb was right about this the entire time, even with Dave's sources telling him they will retain her. I'm not going to call out Dave. I'm not going to, but we will have John Adams, or we should have John Adams on the show tomorrow. And John Adams and I disagreed over whether or not Kellie Harper would be fired. So just want to point that out. Kenneth Rivette says terrible recruiter. That's what killed her. Kenneth, interestingly enough, I think she recruited for a specific particular style. I just don't think that style works anymore. Smoky Mountain Red said just enough to pay off my wife's master degree. Yes, the 1.7 million. But some people are saying go after Dawn Staley. Guys, y'all really think that you can go after Dawn Staley? Do you really think that's possible? I mean, maybe. That would be interesting. You know, anybody... Look, you're the Lady Vols program. You go for whoever you can. I don't think Dawn Staley's leaving South Carolina, though. I think she is there and trying to turn South Carolina into the next Lady Vols basketball program, which, by the way, she could be very close to doing so with another national championship, which she wins that this year. Had it not been for COVID's season, she'd already have 4 national titles if she's able to win it this year. And SC Scout Guy says it right. There's 0 chance of Dawn leaving. Both of her parents are in Columbia, as well as her extended family. And so I think Dawn Staley is going to stay at South Carolina. There's no reason for her to leave to go to Tennessee anymore. She's built South Carolina into a program on its own. That's like thinking, yes, Tennessee is a more prestigious program, but Dawn has turned South Carolina into that. And so it's on Tennessee's level in terms of hiring power now. So I don't think Danny White will go there. I think Danny White will also, I think Danny White is going to play the money game. He's going to play the finance game. He's going to play the numbers game. And part of playing the numbers game is probably not shelling out what you need to shell out to get the right head coach. That's why OK Jackson says you need someone like Muffet McGraw, 2-time national championship coach. I mean, that's fair. Muffet McGraw is kind of an interesting one, but again, you'd have to shell out some money. I think Danny White is, I don't think he's not going to work to try to make the Lady Vols program great, but I do think he's going to play, he's going to nickel and dime this hire a little bit. And so we're just going to have to see where he goes. I know people want the big name, but guys, typically I say that, but look at Danny White's track record. If anybody can find the right coach for the right job, Danny White is that guy. So I think that you can actually find the right coach for the right job that nobody else has identified. And OK Jackson says, give me a big name or we're effed. And Encyclo-DZ says, just accept mediocrity. That's not accepting mediocrity. Josh Heupel was not a big name when Tennessee hired him. He wasn't that much of a hot commodity. And look at what's happened there. You find coaches out of nowhere. SC Scout Guy says Nikki Collin out of Baylor. That's an interesting one. Jeff Waltz, Michael Watson brings up Jeff Waltz. Jeff Waltz wanted the job a few years ago. I don't know if Danny White will hire a man. When I talk about the Lady Vol contingency, they want a woman who played for the program. I think Danny White will compromise halfway on that. I think he will find a woman as a head coach. And I know people don't like that. I know people don't like to hear that. I understand it. You should just go hire and find the best coach. But there's more to the Lady Vol brand than meets the eye. It is the program. It is the pinnacle of making women's sports relevant. The Lady Vols were great because Tennessee embraced Title IX before anybody else did. So because of that, I do think Danny White is going to try to split the baby a little bit and go find a woman to be head coach. But I also think that he will not stick with the Lady Vol contingency. But if he does, and if he hires Carol Lawson, I mean, Carol Lawson right now is pretty darn qualified to be the head coach. I mean, what she's done at Duke is nothing short of phenomenal in a few years. I mean, she's got them at 20. They went to the Sweet 16 this year. They went to the second round last year. They've gotten better each year under her. Homegirl knows basketball, but I still think Danny White might actually look somewhere else. But we're going to talk a little bit more about that later in the week. Hit that like and subscribe button. Thanks for tuning in. Ring the bell. Turn your notifications on. We will have a lot more coverage on this as the week goes on. We're going to talk about candidates. We're going to talk about what this means for different people involved in the athletic department. Again, breaking news, the Tennessee Lady Vols have fired Kellie Harper. She is out as the head coach of the program. We will have more on this as the week goes on. With Off the Hook Sports, this has been Caleb Calhoun. Again, don't forget to tune in at 10 a.m. Eastern on weekdays for the actual live show. Thanks a lot, you guys, for tuning in. Have a great rest of your day.